Boo!
I'm going to go on with my story. We got a lot of chat about video games going on in the chat. Oddly enough, I'm going to tie into that. I have a Pokemon Go story.
All right.
I've actually never played Pokemon Go. I had, I guess, growing up, played the original stuff for the Game Boy and the Game Boy Color, but I have never played any of the new stuff. I don't know if you, Luke.
I actually have. I have all the new Pokemons.
This is actually called a warning about Pokemon Go. If you haven't already jumped on the Pokemon Go hype train, consider yourself lucky. For the millions of us who did, listen carefully. This game is more dangerous than you think. For those of you who don't know what it is a GPS-based game on your phone where you walk around in real life locating these cute little monsters to catch them with a capsule. Sounds innocent enough, right? When it first came out, I, like many others, were absolutely thrilled to stand outside my lawn for hours catching Pidgeys. It seemed like I was finally living out a childhood dream, even if I was just catching these stupid-ass purple rats and birds. My house is located in a smaller suburb neighborhood pretty far from town, but there were several lakes and wooded areas nearby that made the area quite beautiful. It was really fun to walk around through the trails catching Pokemon. However, there weren't much around here except for the really common ones my friends already had. I realized there was even more to this game when I discovered gym battles and Pokestops. This got me biking all over town trying to visit them and collect all the different types of Pokemon I could find. When I finally hit level 5, I joined Team Instinct, excited to finally start battling. This went on for a couple of days. My parents were thrilled that I was spending so much time outside instead of locked up in my room playing video games. Guess I was still playing, but as long as I was outside, my parents didn't care. About a week after I had downloaded the app, I was up late playing Overwatch when I noticed there was a new Pokemon on my nearby list. Sweet, a Coughing. I didn't have one of these yet. It was almost 2 a.m., but I figured I'll just be outside for a little bit. I won't go that far. I mean, you gotta catch them all, right? We just finished a round of Hanamura, so I told my friends I'd be right back. When I got outside, I realized the street was pretty well lit thanks to multiple streetlights placed throughout the neighborhood. It was comforting. I'll be okay, I said to myself, reassuring, and I began walking in the direction to test if Coughing was getting any closer. However, I'd made it pretty far and I noticed he remained at 3 steps. The number of steps indicates how far away it is from 0 to 3 steps. I then turned back the other way and walked for about 5 minutes before realizing he wasn't getting any closer. Slightly frustrated, I decided to head back home when I noticed a new Pokemon had popped up on my nearby list. At first, I wasn't sure what it was. It didn't seem to have a head, just had these long, thin arms and legs that were attached to the body. It reminded me of Deox in defense form, but remembered that it wasn't even in the game. Then it hit me. It was a Hitmonlee. I had heard my friends talking about how rare these were, and I quickly got excited. I was pretty far from home, but I was eager to show off this to my new friends, if I could catch this Hitmonlee. So I continued down the road. As I proceeded in my quest to find him, I noticed it got closer and closer until it was at the top of my nearby Pokemon list. Glad to know I was on the right track. My excitement quickly turned to hesitation when I realized I had made it to the edge of the woods. I'm a pretty avid horror fan. I've already seen and read my fair share of scary stories about the woods, but here I was, about to catch a Hitmonlee, so I wasn't about to let some axe murder or staircases turn me off from continuing down the trail. I reminded myself that I'd be quick and thought of the glory of bragging to my friends, so I stepped foot into the eerie cluster of trees. Fortunately, a small dirt path had already been cleared out, so I didn't have to worry about getting sliced up by the tree branches and such. The path was fairly straight, so I didn't feel the need to turn on the flashlight on my phone. This game absolutely slaughters my phone battery. I followed the path all the way to a clearing where several picnic tables had been overturned. I shined my screen on them and noticed several large splatters located on the wooden tables. They looked red, but it was hard to tell. Someone must have been playing paintball here and used these for cover. Pretty good idea if you ask me. At this point, Hitmonlee, it was only one step away, but when I tried to look for a way to keep moving forward, all I was met with were trees. The path had ended. I considered forcing my way through the thick setting of trees, but I guess I finally got some sense in me and passed it off as a bad idea. Disappointed, I turned to follow my trail back, and to my surprise, Hitmonlee was getting closer. I didn't understand how walking in the opposite direction, I was all of a sudden being brought closer to my target. But I didn't question it. Perhaps it was glitchy, and fortunately, maybe in my favor. Or so I thought. I grinned as the one step quickly turned into no steps, indicating the Pokemon was right near me. I stepped and waited for the sweet victory vibration of my phone, and sure enough, it came. But something was wrong. Very wrong. First of all, Hitmonlee was brown. Whatever just popped up next to me on my screen was an ugly gray. I zoomed in and noticed that it didn't have any eyes. There was just this large blob with arms that stood up with two very long legs. I tapped on it to catch, and my camera turned on. The arrow indicated that it was to my left, so I spun my phone around until I was pointing back in the direction of the clearing. My heart raced as I frantically looked at my screen for something, but there was nothing there. Just a lone Pokeball waiting to catch whatever I had just found. I'm still not sure why I did this. It wouldn't have helped, but instinctively, I flipped on my flashlight, and immediately I wished I hadn't. Whatever stood before was neither human nor Pokemon. It was fucking terrifying. It had these two awful sunken holes the size of a beehive that might have had eyes, if any, possibly. Its entire body was made of this gray, rotten flesh that made me want to hurl just looking at it. I don't know how long I stood there, paralyzed with fear, before I noticed its body started separating at the abdomen to reveal thousands of tiny teeth that looked like horrid legs coming from a centipede. Then I screamed. If I wasn't running before, I sure as hell was then. I was letting out these panic whispers as I tried to navigate my way back home. With all the roots and rocks, I knew at some point I was going to trip, and this would be the end of me. Immediately after having this thought, my foot got caught on something hard and I hit the ground, throwing my phone out ahead of me accidentally. I started crying as I heard the sound of branches snapping, getting closer and closer. I could see the headlines already. 19-year-old murdered in the woods while playing Pokemon Go. At that point, I must have been pretty delusional because something screamed in my head that I should grab my phone and throw a Pokeball at it. A Pokeball at that thing. When you have nothing to lose, you're willing to try just about anything. So I scrambled over my phone and held it up in front of me like a holy cross. I flipped on the flashlight and focused my phone screen on. It's just a game. It's just a game, I repeated to myself. Suddenly, it leaped out towards me. I swiped up on my phone screen and closed my eyes, feeling ridiculous for what I had just done. Then I heard it, the sound of something being captured. I opened my eyes to see that nothing lay ahead of me except for a couple of rocks and twigs. But on my screen, there was a Pokeball. You know that anxious feeling you get when you're down to just a few Pokeballs and you just have to catch it? Well, imagine that, but had 100 times more terror and panic. I prayed that whatever I had just caught would stay that way. I listened carefully, eyes closed, 1 tick, 2 tick, 3 tick, caught. My mind couldn't process what had just happened. I just lay there on the ground, sobbing and shaking from whatever the hell I just experienced. Eventually, I realized I didn't want to spend another second in those stupid woods, and I got up, checked my phone. The Pokemon Go app had crashed. I didn't care. I started to run, but quickly stopped from the pain I was experiencing shooting up my leg. I must have twisted my ankle pretty bad from the fall. I hobbled back home as quickly as I could. Then when I got home, I collapsed on the couch. The next morning, I wanted to believe that I had dreamed the whole thing, but the pain in my foot told me I hadn't. I then decided to check my phone, so I started Pokemon Go and checked my recent Pokemon, and my heart sank. That thing that I saw yesterday was now on my phone. I summoned up the courage to tap on it, and it brought me to a stat screen like any other Pokemon, but everything, including its name, were just these weird scratch-like symbols. It looked as terrible as it did last night in person. Disgusted, I decided I had had enough of the stupid game and quickly deleted it. This was too real for me. I was done catching Pokemon. But, as we all know, that's not true. You can't just quit Pokemon Go. I downloaded the app 3 days later, and made a new account. The game is just too much fun. But I want to warn you guys, there's something sinister about the game, and I experienced it firsthand. I love playing it so much, but I feel like I'm being put in danger. Stay safe, everyone. I was still a little bit skeptical that the whole thing ever even happened till I went back. I went back to the trail a few days later with some friends to check it out. When we got to the clearing, we found something incredibly creepy that I think may help explain what happened. I'll finish typing that up in a bit, but I noticed on my screen that coughing popped up again on my nearby list. I still don't have one yet, and I really, really want it. It's almost midnight, but I figure I'll just be outside for a little bit. I won't go far. I mean, you got to catch them all, right?
I like that one a lot. That was creepy and weird, and that was awesome. I love that story.
We've been doing this for over 6 months now. Have you ever had a story when you're reading it and you're literally getting cold chills?
Yeah, a few I've read and was like, oh my god, this is terrifying.
Reading it out loud on the show here, I was getting cold chills.
Yeah.
This story stuck to me when I read it. I'm not gonna lie. I've never played Pokemon Go, but damn.
Pokemon Go is a weird game, right? Because you gotta go out to these random spots, and you never know where you're gonna end up at. Well, at least back when it was real popular, because people were going everywhere. You never know where you're gonna end up at when you're getting certain Pokemon or tracking them. And I've heard some weird stories where people ended up in people's yards and stuff like that. This is something else. It's one of those things we talk about, like, demons and monsters and things like that. There are many different stories where we've talked about those things where we're like, yeah, that seems plausible because we don't know what's out there. We've had long discussions about not knowing the other side. Yeah, something like this could happen. Like, you never know what... I've seen people talk about demons infecting their computers or stuff like that before. For something to get into your phone or your game, definitely could happen. I've seen some weird stuff on the internet that is just unexplainable when it comes to some of the more terrifying aspects of the universe. So yeah, this sounded terrifying. I liked it a lot. That was a great story, and it was legitimately creepy listening to on my end.
You know how it is. Once you read one story, you go down this rabbit hole. There are several stories out there similar to this in the sense of these phantom sort of creatures on the app.
Oh, Pokemon Go?
Yes, it correlates with scary things that happen. They were all pretty good, honestly, but this other one seems so extreme, I just didn't think it was real. This one, I think, sounds pretty real.
Yeah, definitely some, like I said, other stories that corroborate the whole something that could get into your electronic devices, something out there. It wasn't necessarily a Pokemon that got in there. It was some sort of other entity that could have been there. And
trying to draw you towards it.
Yeah, and then mess with them because people were out there playing that game. Just wants to get someone.
So I liked how it ended here when he said that they saw something really creepy, and he'll finish typing that up later, which I couldn't find. I'll have to go back and look a little bit harder, but that Pokemon popped up again and he was going to go check it out.
Yeah.
I thought the did he use it 2 or 3 times? Got to catch them all. Definitely great timing when he used them, though.
Yes, it was. I like that a lot. It felt like a, what's the word I'm looking for? Just a really good way of ending a story. Just something to put there. It's a hook, and it works really good. And
can you put yourself in his shoes? Because I could. I don't play the game, but I can see being in the situation like, should I continue on into these woods?
Yeah, I could definitely see that. There have been times when I've been like, different trails and stuff like that out in the woods, and you kind of like see an area that looks really neat off in the distance, but you gotta go through like a kind of a creepier area there first. I definitely can see that happening.
I was surprised he was 19. What he said, news article said 19-year-old, but I know a lot of older people were into this game, so there's a lot of people asking if we're tempted to get the game now.
No.
He said no.
The base game isn't really my kind of style, so yeah. Like I said, I'm not a big mobile game player. I play chess on my phone, and that's about it.
No comment. It's just ridiculous.
I
Oh,
got like a 1300 rank, which is, it's not great, but I'm not bad.
Jeff Townsend Media. CG, good night.
And the question is, do I stay here? Will you be back? Are you gonna come back? Will you be back? Are you coming back?